So the people over at Sonicware have come up with a nice new update for the ELZ1 Play that has lots of new features, including wavetable support. We can now layer oscillators. There's a whole batch of new presets. They've also partnered with Waldorf to bring you 16 of their wavetables from their original wavetable synths from back in the day. There's lots of other bits and bobs too that I'll be covering in the video. So the first thing we should do is just to have a look at how the update is applied. Sonicware have given us different methods of updating the ELZ1 Play depending on whether we want to keep any of the contents on the SD card or not. If we don't, we can just delete these two files on the SD card and add these two new ones and run the update process, and that will completely start from scratch. But if we want to keep anything, we've got a bank file we can write from. If we add that to the backup menu from here and run the backup within the ELZ1 Play, we can flash that to a bank. Or if we go into the memory folder, we can add in individual presets and write those. I don't know exactly how this will be packaged up when it comes on the website, so these files are just here as an example. For now, I'm just going to completely delete the contents of the SD card, add these two files, and then once they've finished writing to the card, I'm going to reinstall the SD card and run the update. So I've reinstalled the SD card. I'm going to hold oscillator and turn it on, and you'll immediately see this update screen. We can scroll down to the update option and press OK. That will look for an update file which is found, so we just press OK. This will then erase the current firmware and presets and install new ones. Once it's verified, you'll see a please restart message, so we just turn off and on again. Then it will boot as normal. So once we get to here, if we're doing the destructive version of the update, you need to go to menu and go to reset. This will rewrite the presets, putting new presets into bank 1 and then redistributing the rest of them throughout the other banks. There we go. Once that's finished, it will return us to this new selection screen. Obviously this is just an example of the destructive version of the update. If you want to make sure you're doing it correctly and you're not going to lose any of the files you have installed, please check the instructions on the update file. So the first thing you should notice after the new update is the new play screen. This gives us quick access to presets. We can just scroll through them really quickly from here and make adjustments. To get out of this screen, we just press oscillator or envelope or any of these buttons. Then if we want to get back into it, we double tap the memory button. Using the type knob, we'll change the preset. Then using the A, B and C knobs, we'll change the different volume of the different layers. So as an example, whilst the D knob gives us access to the main volume for the preset. The changes to A, B and C are just temporary, so if we scroll past this preset and back in again, they'll be restored. The looper is also off by default now. This gives us more resources for the synth engine. As a result of this, the looper buttons are bank buttons while the looper is off. So if we just press bank 2, we'll go to bank 2. And banks 3 and 4 here for me are empty, so they're just showing empty presets. So you may have noticed me mentioning layers back there. That's because we've got another new feature on the ELZ1 Play in that we can layer up our oscillators, or set up differently. This can make for some nice dense, complex patches, such as this new preset. So if we go to the oscillator screen on this preset, you can see across the top we've got tabs that we can switch between just by pressing the oscillator button. So I've got 2 wavetable oscillators with different wavetables in, and on the third one I've got this sound flute that I'm using as a noise source. If we go through to some different presets, like this bass for example, this one just uses 3 different wavetables. The volume knobs from the play screen are just quick access. If we want to actually edit them within the preset, we hold function and press the oscillator button, and that takes us to this new screen. As you can see, we've got pitch, a detune and level on the A, B and C knobs, and then a delay on D. So if I go to this second layer, I can adjust the pitch of that relative to the rest of the sound. In a coarse manner, using the pitch knob, which is A, we can detune with B. And we can adjust the level with C. And if we want the oscillator to kick in slightly later, we turn up D. So there's quite a lot we can do with that already. So as a quick example, let's have a look at setting up a layered preset. If I go to bank 3, which for me is going to be empty, we've got this empty preset, which is a wavetable oscillator. I'm just going to change that to a standard oscillator, just so I can avoid having to talk about the wavetable oscillator just yet. So we've just got this saw on layer 1. As you can see, we've only got one layer, so if we press the oscillator button again, we'll see a button next to it reading OK. So if you press OK, that adds in another layer. And then if we press it again, we can add in a third layer. So you just scroll between them now, as we did before. I'm going to make this one a triangle, and this one a square. So we've got a 3-layer sound here. Let's do what we did before, just so I can differentiate between them. I'm going to change the pitch of one of them. And then let's change that one to an interval. If we want to mute any of these, we can hold mute and press the oscillator. And as you can see, the little green light goes off. If you mute all 3, we're going to get silence, obviously. If we want to delete one of them, we can scroll over to this one, for example, hold clear and press the oscillator button, and that will delete that particular selection. So in addition to choosing the number of layers we can have by adding different oscillators, we can also change the number of envelopes we can have. So it's set up in serial mode by default. So we just got one envelope and everything's passing through it. It's all being affected the same way. But if we want to change that, we hold function and press the envelope. So now we've got 2. So for example, I can have this one fade in slower. And we can also change the type, so they don't need to be the same type of envelope. So standard ADSR on here, one with curves, and we can go wild. So the same thing is also true of filters. So the filter's off by default. We're in serial mode. If I turn this on, we're going to get a filter that affects both oscillators at the same time. But if I want to change that, hold function and press filter. And then we've got 2 different filters, so I can change this one to say a high pass. So we've got the 2 different filter types here, we've got 2 different envelopes, 2 different oscillator types. So by changing all those different settings and also adjusting the settings in here to get them to layer up differently, we can have large rich sounds, or we can have like layered intervals like we've just been demonstrating. So we've got a lot more sound design potential in general. So let's have a look at the new Wavetable Oscillator type. So this is now the first default oscillator. It comes before low bit, so right at the start. So what a wavetable is just a row of waveforms, one after the other. If we just play now, we're just playing where the white line is, and we can move through with the position knob to access different waveforms. And the idea is that you automate this to create tonal changes over time. We've got different wavetables here. All the ones with the little orange W at the bottom are the original Waldorf Wavetables from Microwave and PPG synthesizers. As we go through, we can see we've got different ones. So this one goes from sine to square, and so on. So there's lots of, there's 16 of the original wavetables here, with varying, tonal content. And beyond that, there's ones that Sonicware have supplied, and then there's some blank slots for you to add your own, which we can do via the SD card. So as an example of how this works, let's just go back to a preset. So in bank 1, patch 119 is this spacey pad sound that uses one of the original wavetables, and it's got 2 stacked on top of each other. Let's have a look through, find something else. As you can see, as it scans through, it's creating tonal changes. So you can do some really interesting, unique things, like this has obviously been a voice that's been sampled in, and used to create a wavetable so it creates vocal-like sounds. Again, we've got 2 wavetables stacked on top of each other. So one of the sounds I created for this new update is the string machine sound. So that just uses the pulse width wavetable and scans through that in multiple layers. All these are set to different octaves. So let's try and create something a little bit like that as an example. So I'll go to a blank patch. I'm going to select that pulse width wavetable, which is this one, which should be square by default. We can move the position through, set it in the middle somewhere. We also have these shapers that we can apply. So we can change the type with C and the depth with D. So there's lots of different shapers we can use. Let's sort of try with... So that's the flip type. Asymmetry will add like pulse width to any oscillator type. And you'll get wildly different results depending on what you feed in and which shaper you use. This is something we can modulate, but I'm going to leave it off for now. Let's go down. We've got a phase here, so we can set the phase output and how much the phase is randomized. This is really useful when layering. But let's go down and apply an LFO. So in here we can target position by default, and we can also target that S value, so that's the shaper value. We target the phase and the pitch. I'm going to leave it on position, which will be really fast. So let's drop the rate and the depth. Then what we can do is we can add another one. So we just go, press that and go OK. So let's mute that first one. So we're just doing this second oscillator. Again, I'm going to change that to pulse width. Do more or less the same thing. We don't have to be too exact. And then when we layer them back up again, we've created a much thicker sound. But what I'm going to do is alter the octave of one of them. So let's go into function and oscillator and drop the pitch. Out to the detune. It's going to get us a bit of more chorusing sound. And we can change the envelope, so just to lengthen. Bring that sustain up. Maybe not that much, let's just have a bit of decay. And let's add a filter, because the string machines tended to have the bass knocked out of them to make them sound a bit more like strings. I'm just going to go with a 6 dB filter. It's already getting pretty close, and that's just 2 oscillators. There's no reverb or anything on this. This is just the sounds of the oscillators working with each other. So if we want to rough up the sound a bit more, we can use one of those shapers. So let's just mute this one, and so we can just hear this one. If we apply the flip type, it's going to rough up the oscillator a bit and make it sound a little bit kind of more analog. So let's do that on both of them. So we have more slots below, so I'm only using one of the modulation slots. We have 2 modulation slots on the Wavetable Oscillator, so we can apply more changes here if we want to. So that's just the basics, obviously. We haven't applied any effects or anything, but we've still got pretty decent sound out of just 2 layered oscillators. So if we want to add our own wavetables, that's pretty easy. It's compatible with Serum wavetables, so I've just grabbed this pack that I found in a random link on the internet. We go into the ELZ1 Play folder, into the Wavetable data folder, and we just paste them in here. So these are all the same size. This will affect the way that they appear on the ELZ1. We'll see that in a minute. So I'm just going to grab a bunch of these and stick on the SD card like this. So with the card back in again, with all those files on, we can see from the Wavetable Oscillator we've got function and OK for card slot in the top right corner. So press function OK. This will load all the custom slots, including the ones that are already full. But at the end of this, we should see the wavetables we just installed. So like I said, they're not all full wavetables, so they won't completely fill the screen. So that'll affect the way we use them. But let's just set up one with an LFO to see what it's like. We can try different ones out. So let's say I like this wavetable, I can then press OK to load it. And we can overwrite one of the slots. Using the type knob, we can move up and down. So these are all the custom slots. Anything from 17 to 48 we can overwrite, but there's some blank ones already. So I might as well use those. So I'm going to paste it into slot 41. And that then becomes slot 41 in the main list of wavetables. So using that, you can use whichever wavetables you can find. So using that wavetable, I've just whipped up a quick patch. Sort of lead sound, because we've got this falling envelope, just to demonstrate some of the new effects. So within the delay and reverb slot of the effects section, we've got these new grain effects. So one is literally just called grain effects. Going to create a scattered kind of sound. Shifting the pitch around, we can change the grain size and timing and feedback and mix on all these. Next one along is grain pad. This is perhaps best used on pad sounds, so I'm just going to lengthen the attack and up the sustain. As you can hear, it creates all these subtle, slow, shifting versions of the patch. The next up is particle, so this is kind of a bit more scattery again, so creates all these little twinkly kind of sounds that are pitched up, I think. Then up from there is grain shift down, so this shifts the pitch down. Again, we can adjust the grain, timing, feedback and mix. So we've got a few other things to mess around with. Let's just turn that off. New to this top effects section is a formant filter. So we can do all kind of vocal formant sounds. We have a rack compressor here, an oscillator, which is for isolating frequencies. It's good for shaping the tone of your sound. Down in the reverb section, there's a new Mirage reverb type. We can affect the low cut and balance here. So we're just left with fully wet reverb. And then we also have a master compressor that we can use. So this would be especially useful if you just want to raise the volume of something, maybe process the drums that we can play on this too. So another addition is an extra modulation type. So next to LFO and envelope, we now have Keytrack. So by default, this on the Wavetable Oscillator will go to the position. So we can see as we play up the keyboard, we get the line moving further and further. Turn it up even more, we can see it more strongly. So that's something we can use to target other things. One thing I really like to do is to target pitch subtly and use it for stretch tuning. So if we were to play normally octaves, for example, we get very stable sound, which is sometimes a little bit unnatural. If we dial up a bit of this, we get a little bit of detune across the keyboard. And then if we want to really push it into horror territory, we can crank that up massively. Just as an example. As mentioned before, the looper defaults to off. We can see we've got this CPU meter at the bottom now, and also the number of voices being used is shown in the top right corner. If we click loop, we're going to get this message Sometimes the wavetables will load slightly slow when the loop's on. So now this is active. When we go back to our edit screen, these are no longer bank buttons. From the looper, if we want to disable it again, we can press the X button. We'll be asked if we want to save, and I'm going to press discard. And then we're back to the way we were before with the bank buttons here. So switching the looper off saves some CPU and can help us not go too high on this meter. So there are a few other little tweaks to the user interface and bug fixes which are listed in the update, so go and check that out if you want any more details. So I hope this helped you get to grips with the new version of the YLZ One Play. Thank you very much for watching, and cheers.